Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Alpha and Omega Ministries. We are so glad that you're with us today, and we are going to study the Torah portion Vayishlach together. So as we get into the story of Vayishlach, let's review what we covered last week. And we remember that Jacob had left Laban, and Jacob now arrives at a very special place, in Hebrew, Ba-Makom. And Ba-Makom is so special. Some say it's the most special place on the earth, and we'd probably agree, because there's a part of that word Ba-Makom which is kum, which means to rise up or resurrect. And so this is the place of resurrection, and this is the place where Jacob arrives. And once he's there, he sleeps with his head on a stone. The Hebrew word for stone, we learned, was Avon. And the first letter of that word is an aleph, which of course represents God. The last two letters of that word are ben, which means son. So this stone represents the Son of God. And when Jacob wakes up, he anoints this stone. He pours oil over it. Well, and when you pour oil over something, it means that you're anointing it. Well, who is the anointed one? Of course, it's the Mashiach, or the Messiah. And so this stone is representing the anointed one, the Messiah. And then we looked at the difference between a stone and a rock. And we learned that a rock is a massive, solid formation. So solid that you build the foundation of your faith on it. And it represents the fathers of our faith and those who went before us. That is the solid foundation that we build our faith on. And then we saw that there was great prophetic significance in this ladder that Jacob dreamed about that went up to heaven and came back to earth. And we looked at that little tiny, smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the Yud. And we learned that though that letter is so small and looks so insignificant, it is hugely significant, because it means that you can go up that ladder and pull heaven back down to earth. You got to go up that ladder, spend time with the Lord, really never leaving him, come back down and bring what you learned to the rest of the world. Bring that light of heaven to the rest of the world. So we ended up our study by looking at wells, and we realized that brides are found at wells. Many significant brides were found at wells, and we saw that the living water is in those wells. We looked at some of the verses that describe that, and we realized that as the bride, we want to hang out at the well and be filled to overflowing with that living water, so that we can take it and care for the flock. And so now we enter into the Torah portion of Vayishlach. Jacob leaves Laban, where he has worked for 20 years. In their little meeting that they had after he left, they agreed not to do evil to one another, and on we go. And now Jacob is about to reunite with Esau, who wanted to kill him when they parted company. So here we go, Genesis 32, 1 through 3. And if you don't have your notes, you can download them on the computer, and I invite you to do that. You can follow right along. So here we go, Genesis 32, 1 through 3. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother, unto the land of Seir, the country of Edom. So Jacob names this place Mahanaim, and it's a wonderful word. You might want to name a child after this, because it's just a beautiful word, Mahanaim, and it's formed from a Hebrew verb that means favor and grace, and from a noun in Hebrew that means encampment. So it's a place, an encampment, where there is favor and grace. And Jacob is thanking the Lord for this place where the very angels of God met him, and they will probably be the ones that will usher him back into the land and protect him where he goes there. A famous sage said that these angels of God that met him were angels who ministered specifically in the land of Israel. They came to meet him, to accompany him to the Holy Land, replacing the angels that had been with him outside the land. So these very angels of God are there to bring Jacob back. And Genesis 32, 3-6 says, Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, you are to say to my master Esau, your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, men servants, and maid servants. I have sent this message to inform my master so that I may find favor in your sight. So, do you hear the words of this? Jacob really wants to disrupt any lingering anger that Esau may feel toward him, and tactfully, once Esau told that he's only been a sojourner, and he refers to Esau as his master. So for the last 20 years, Jacob has been a sojourner, which is the Hebrew word garti. He said, I've been a sojourner. The root of this word is ger. And ger, in addition to meaning sojourner, means an alien or a stranger. So Esau would get the understanding about this. He's saying, hey, I haven't been any great prince. I've been in a foreign land. I've been an alien. I wasn't some great prince. I was a mere shepherd. I worked for somebody else for 20 years as a shepherd. So Esau did not need to hate him because the blessing of Isaac had not been fulfilled at this point. And so you can just see Jacob trying to diffuse this situation. We have a lot to learn from this example when we think about how we approach people who may not be favorable toward us. Do we do it with humility? And do we do it with a voice that says, look, I'm your servant. I'm here to serve you. So also, in using this word garti, this word that means sojourner and alien, amazingly, the gematria, which is the number assigned to each Hebrew letter, when you add it up, the gimel is 3, the resh represents 200, the tav 400, and the yud 10, all added together, gives you 613, the very number of laws that the Lord gave to Israel. And so what's he saying with this? He's saying, listen, I was a stranger and alien in this land, but I obeyed God. I stuck to what I knew about righteousness. I stuck to what I knew about serving the Lord. And I did not take on the ways of Laban. And so Jacob also wants Esau to be told, Genesis 32:5, I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find favor in your sight. So he's preparing Esau, not only with humble words and humility, like saying, look, I was a garti, I was a sojourner, an alien, a foreigner, a mere shepherd, but I want to give you gifts. And so, Genesis 32:6-8, then the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you. And 400 men are with him. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into 2 companies. So we see a phrase there that says greatly afraid and distressed. And that Hebrew word for distressed, when you look at the meaning, it means that he was close to being terrified, if not terrified. Here, not only is he fearful of Esau's anger because he was going to kill him, but now he has 400 men with him. So Jacob prepares for this meeting with Esau, and he does it in 3 ways. Number 1, if there should be a battle, he has divided his troops, and they are ready to fight. So we read in Genesis 32, 7 and 8. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into 2 camps. And he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company which is left will escape. So he had a plan. He wasn't just going to sit back and see what happened. He was certainly hopeful that he wouldn't have to come to war or come to the fighting. But if he did, he was hoping that the front camp could do the battle and the back camp could escape. And number 2, he prayed and asked God for mercy and protection. Genesis 32, 9 through 12. Then Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you,' I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant. For I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become 2 camps. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with children. For you said, I will surely treat you well and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude." So is there a part of this prayer that really speaks to you, that jumps out at you, that is the most powerful? Is it the part where Jacob is humble before God and says, look, I'm not worthy of the least of all these blessings that you have blessed me with? So he's recognizing the hand of God in his life. And where every blessing comes from, are we cognizant of that every day? Are we thanking the Lord every day for the fact that he's given us breath? He has given us the ability to get up, to move, to work, to see, to think, to hear, to communicate. It's so incredible, the amazing things that we take for granted. But Jacob is remembering this in prayer to God. And then he reminds him of his own words, God's own words to him. And isn't that incredibly powerful? Because it says the word will not return void. So when you speak the word that God has spoken to you, when you speak the words right out of the Bible in your prayers, they're powerful because they are God's words and they will not return void. And number 3, he sent a lavish tribute to Esau to appease his anger. Genesis 32, 13 through 15. So he lodged there that same night and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau his brother, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels, and with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 foals. And he had them delivered 1 species at a time. And he commanded his servant to say that his servant Jacob was sending these. So this was a double humble act that Jacob was committing. He was showing humility. He wasn't provoking Esau. So Genesis 32:20, we continue. And also say, behold, your servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So now we see the heart of Jacob is to be accepted by his brother. And isn't that the yearning of all of our hearts? That those who we love, those who are in our family, our neighbors, our friends, though there may be something that has come between us, some contention, some reason that we've grown apart, our heart's desire is that we will come back and be reunited with him. And that's Jacob's heart in this matter. So with all these gifts and humble words, was Jacob doubting God's promise? It is said that the righteous are never sure of themselves. Wow, let me repeat that. The righteous are never sure of themselves. Jacob considered, he's thinking, whether he might have sinned while with Laban and forfeited his right to God's promises. Do you ever have those thoughts go through your mind? Jacob was thinking about these things. Or he considered if God might want to pay him back for his treatment of Esau because he stole the blessing. And God might take pity on Esau. After all, he had taken pity on Leah because she was the unloved one, and Leah had children, and Rachel didn't have children for a long time. These things are running through Jacob's mind. He's just flesh and blood, just like we are. And so we wonder about these things. So the sages tell a great story. It's called the story of the 4 kings, and I want to read it to you now. There were 4 kings, each of whom had a different request of God. These kings were David, Asa, Jehoshaphat, and Hezekiah. David said, I have pursued my enemies, Lord, and overtaken them. I did not turn back until they were consumed, and I have prayed for success in battle. And God answered him and killed his enemies. Then King Asa stood up and said, I lack the strength to kill my enemies. Instead, I will pursue them, and you, God, do what is necessary. And God said to him, I will do it. And God killed his enemies. Then King Jehoshaphat stands up and says, I don't have the strength either to kill them or to chase them. Instead, I will sing praises, and you do what is necessary. And God said to him, I will do it. And God killed his enemies. Then King Hezekiah stood up and said, I do not have the strength either to kill them or chase them or even to sing praises. Instead, I need to go to bed. And in the morning, I will get up and teach Torah. You do what is necessary. And God said to him, I will do it. As it is written, and it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote the camp of the Assyrian. So which king had the greatest faith? Was it Hezekiah, who seems to have had the greatest miracle? Or, no, the sages say that it was King David. Why? It's because King David both did all that he could and he prayed. And that is what God desires. He desires to work with us, and he desires for us to acknowledge that he is in control and we are giving that to him too. So it seems that Jacob would be in this category. It's a great story to remember. It shows that God wants to work with us. He's a good father. What father doesn't want to work with their children? It's so incredibly rewarding when your children begin to grow and work and say, Dad, look, we could do this, we can do that, let's do it. And they begin to take initiative. What father doesn't love that? Well, our Heavenly Father is just the same. He wants us to get out there and take initiative and to pray that he will bless the efforts and that he will go before us and that he will bring victory. That's God our Father. He wants to work with us. So what's the lesson? Don't rely solely on God's miracles, but do all you can too. Then Jacob took all the wives and the 11 sons across the Jabbok, and he was alone. And then Genesis 24 through 30 says, then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And he said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So Jacob struggled with God all night long. And what was that struggle for? It was for the blessing. He wanted this God-man to bless him. Remember, he wanted the blessing of his father Isaac too. Jacob, and he prevailed in that. And that's why he said, you've struggled with God and men. He struggled and got the blessing from his father. Now he's struggling with God for the blessing. And he struggles until God blesses him. So we see that Jacob is a man who yearns to be blessed. Have you ever thought about this whole concept of struggling with God? Well, Abraham also struggled with God when he spoke with him about Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 18, 23 and 24. And Abraham came close and said, will you destroy the righteous together with the wicked? Suppose there are in the city 50 righteous. Will you destroy that place and not spare it for the sake of the 50 in it? He was struggling with God. He wanted mercy. He was asking for mercy. Jacob was asking for blessing. Abraham was struggling with God so that God would show mercy. Jonah struggled with God. Jonah 1 through 3. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, get up and go to the large city of Nineveh and preach against it, for their sin has come up before me. But Jonah ran away. Going toward Tarshish, he went down to Joppa and found a ship which was going to Tarshish. Jonah paid money and got on the ship to go with them to get away from the Lord. He didn't want to hear from the Lord. Jonah struggled in a way that was different from Abraham and different from Jacob. They stayed there and had that face-to-face struggle. But Jonah, he's running the opposite direction. He's paying money to get away from the Lord. But does even that work? We will never get away from the Lord because he pursues us. He wants that struggle. He wants obedience. He wants us to yield. But he also wants us to take the initiative for the blessing. He wants to know that we yearn for his mercy to be shown to people. And so we see this struggle going on. And Job struggled with God. Job 13, 23 and 24. But I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue my case with God. How many are my iniquities and my sins? Make me know my transgression and my sin. Why do you hide your face and count me as your enemy? Have you ever been in a place like that? Here's Job. You know, everything was taken from him. His children, his his farm animals, everything was taken. And yet Job was a righteous man. Why? Why do the righteous suffer? So Job is having this struggle with God. And it's a real struggle. Do you ever feel that struggle that Job was having? It's a real deal. Paul got knocked off his horse struggling with God. Acts 22, 6-8. I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew language, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? It hurts you to kick against the goads. And I said, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. So here is Saul, soon to be the apostle Saul, or Paul as we know him. And he is fighting against God. He's fighting against God's people, and God's knocking him off his horse and blinding him so that he can see. And so sometimes that struggle exists, and it might exist for a long time. Maybe we see it going on in the lives of our children. Maybe we see it going on in the lives of people that we love, this struggle against God. But we can pray as Jacob did and use the word of the Lord in our prayers. And we can show them the love of the Lord. And we can walk in his ways. And we can struggle with God on their behalf. And we will see God answer. Dennis Prager, you probably all know him. He has a famous conservative talk show in LA. He has Prager University, and he does these amazing 5-minute teachings on social media. And he was once approached by a Muslim woman who asked him one question: why aren't you a Muslim? He thought a minute and he replied, Islam means submit to God, and Israel means struggle with God. I would rather struggle with God than submit to God. The woman thought for a moment and said, thank you, turned around and walked away. What did that mean to her? Well, remember Jacob's name was turned to Israel by this man that he struggled with all night long. And I'm going to turn this and show you some amazing things about this name, Israel. Here it is written out in the middle, right here. Israel. So you can divide this word in two ways. If you divide it Yishra, Yishra means to connect, to contend with, or to struggle with. Yishra, to struggle or contend, and El is God. So Yisrael is to struggle with God. That's what the word Israel means. Or you can look at it divided as Yashar, which is straight or right, El, straight to God, or the right way to God is through Israel. And so either way you divide it, it's amazing. But right in the midst of the word Israel means to struggle with God. So we can't think of this in a negative connotation. We have to think of this in a positive connotation, because if we're going to struggle with somebody, it means that we have a relationship with them. You don't go struggle with somebody you don't even know, probably. But you might struggle with your own mom, or your own dad, or sister, or brother over who knows what. But it's a struggle. It shows there's a relationship there. It's iron sharpening iron, if you will. That struggle causes us to think, to act, to dig in and search out the word more and more. So struggle can be a very good thing. It means that we have a relationship with God our Father, and that it's very real, and that it's alive. And so Genesis 33:1. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men, So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants. So despite declaring that he had just seen the face of God, and God himself had blessed him, and God himself had changed his name to Israel, Jacob didn't just sit back and glory in that. Jacob took action, and he did what he could. He did not wait for a miracle, though he could have, but would he have seen it? He was ready for battle. He took the preparations that he could take. Then Jacob bows 7 times to Esau. And that kind of a bow means that he was literally prostrated on the ground, flat out. And Genesis 33:4 tells us, but Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Now, that is an amazing picture painted of a brother that wanted to murder the other one the last time they'd seen each other. So if you look at the verbs in that verse, the running, the embracing, the kissing, and the weeping, it really does let you know that these brothers had feelings for one another. They really did love each other somewhere deep down inside. And Genesis 33:5, and he, Esau, lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, who are these with you? So he, Jacob, said, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. So Jacob is still displaying the great humility with Esau in saying, calling himself his servant. Then the maids, Leah, Rachel, came forward with their children, and they bowed low. So they'd been taught that they were supposed to do this when they met him. Genesis 33:8, then Esau said, what do you mean by all this company which I met? And he, Jacob, said, these are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. And Jacob said, no, please. If I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face, as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Please take my blessing. And he took it. It's as though Jacob once took the blessing from Esau, but now he's giving it back, and Esau receives it. Now Esau wants to escort Jacob and his family. Genesis 33:15 through 17. Then Esau said, let me assign to you some of the men who are with me. But Jacob said, oh no, my lord, it's just too kind. You're being too kind to me. So Esau started back that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed on to Sukkot and built a house for himself and made stalls for his cattle. That is why the place is called Sukkot. So this has been an incredible story of 2 brothers prophesied in the womb, but in their growing up years, they grew apart. Jacob stole the blessing from Esau, and they departed with Esau wanting to murder Jacob, but now they've come back together and even wept on each other's necks, but still they go their separate ways. There's a lot left of this story to be told, but we're going to leave it there for today, and we're going to go to our half Torah in Obadiah. And I love this half Torah portion. I want to give you a little bit of background on Obadiah. First of all, let's start with his name, which is Obadiah, or we say Obadiah in English. Eved, the first part of his name, means servant. So we know about Obadiah that he is a servant, and Yah is a shortcut for God. So we have the servant of God, Obadiah, the servant of God. So Obadiah was a servant, and he was a prophet at the same time as Elijah. This lets us know that he lived in days of King Ahaz and wicked Queen Jezebel. When Jezebel was hunting down all the prophets of God and wanted to kill them all, every last one, it was Obadiah, the servant of God, who rounded up 100 of them and put them in caves. And then he supported them. He took care of all their needs while they were hiding in those caves. He did it at his own expense, and he did it without anyone asking him to do this. So then back to the struggle. We see that the struggle that began in a womb, grew into the blessing being stolen. That was the next struggle. And now it's still going on between Israel and the descendants of Esau. Well, who did the descendants of Esau become? The Edomites. Now, the Edomites gave Israel trouble. They refused to aid Israel during their wilderness wanderings, and you can read about that in Numbers 10. And later, during a time of invasion, Obadiah condemns them for not helping Israel again. But Obadiah had a prophetic message for Edom, and he was the perfect person to deliver this message. Do you know why? Because Obadiah was an Edomite, but he decided to follow the ways of the Lord of Israel, and he became a servant of God. So, here we go. In Jewish history, in the Talmud, it says of Obadiah, Obadiah, who dwelt amidst two wicked people, Ahab and Jezebel, and did not learn their ways, let him come and prophesy the downfall of Esau, who dwelt amidst two righteous people, Isaac and Rebekah, and did not learn their ways. So this was kudos to Obadiah, to live amongst this wicked, wicked generation, but not become wicked, remained a servant of God, did what was right without even being asked at his own expense. But Esau did the very opposite. He lived among, or even with, Isaac and Rebekah, his own parents, those righteous people, but he did not take on their ways, but he became wicked. And so, how do you judge righteousness? Do you judge righteousness against wickedness? I hope not, because if you judge righteousness against wickedness, righteousness is always going to have to be lowering its standards. So as the culture gets more wicked, and we look at it and say, well, we're pretty good up here, we're pretty righteous, so we can just come down here a little bit, you're going to lower your standards every time. If you want to judge righteousness, judge it against the Word of God. That's the way to do it. I just always think of my grandpa when I think about this. When I was a little kid, my mom and dad and my brother and I lived with my grandparents. And there was one day, and there was they let us know that Grandpa was bringing a present home for the whole family that night. So we were all so excited and couldn't wait for Grandpa to get home. And sure enough, Grandpa got home and he brought this big box into the house, and we all stood around as he opened it, and he brought out this other big box, and it was a television set. Well, we'd never seen a television set. So he plugged it in, and they got those little funny ears that you put on top of the TV to make it the picture come in clear, and turned it on, and there was a picture and people talking and doing things, and oh my gosh, we were so excited. So we loved this thing called a television, and we got to watch it when there were programs on. And so Grandpa's favorite program was Spade Cooley, and I think it was on every Friday or Saturday night, I can't remember. But the whole family would gather around and watch Spade Cooley. It was country western music, and it was just fun and happy. Well, at some point, my grandpa learned that Spade Cooley had gotten himself into a lot of trouble, and he wasn't being a righteous man. And when my grandpa learned that, he was a pastor, he came home and he took that television set and he carried it out the back door, through the backyard, through the back gate, into the alley, and he put that TV in the trash. And we were all kind of like, Grandpa, that's our TV. And he wouldn't have it in the house because his standard of righteousness was being violated, and he was not going to let into his home something that wasn't righteous. And he didn't want his family to be tainted by it, or to think that that standard of righteousness should go down, because the culture, the evil in the culture, kept getting more and more evil. And he did something about it. And I will always remember that as long as I live. So Esau and his descendants lived at Mount Seir. And Obadiah says that their doom will come in the days of the Messiah. So as the time of the Messiah draws close, we're going to see the doom of the Edomites. And Obadiah 1:1-4 says, "The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise you, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made you small among the heathen. You are greatly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you. You that dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that says in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though you exalt yourself as the eagle, and though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, says the Lord." So Obadiah is proclaiming, hey, nothing is hidden from God. Even the very pride of the heart is crystal clear to God. So the Edomites were cousins of the Israelites, but of cold hearts with no compassion. So how was this pride shown? Obadiah 1:9-11, 17 and 18 says, "Then your mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end, that everyone from the mountains of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For violence against your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever. In that day you stood on the other side. In the day that strangers carried captive the forces, when foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem, even you were as one of them. But on Mount Zion there shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and no survivor shall remain of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken." And so Obadiah 1:15 will end up here. "For the day of the Lord upon all the nations is near. As you have done, so it shall be done to you." And so that's a law in God's economy. What you sow, you're going to reap. And surely it has been foretold in the book of Obadiah that Esau was going to pay for what they have done and not done in helping Israel. And the exciting part is that there will be deliverance in Zion, and that there shall be holiness there. And so that is something that we can all look forward to, pray for, and be excited about. So go out and share good news this week. Be a light to the nations. Be a light to your family, your neighbors, and pray for the return of the Lord. May you have shalom.